guys, it's Julia. Welcome back to my channel. So today's video is one I've been very excited to bring to you guys. For the past about 2 weeks or so, I've been testing out these products, doing different looks with them, so I can bring you guys a full brand review of JUVIA'S. I think since like the dawn of time, or maybe just when I started making eyeshadow videos, I've been getting requests to do a JUVIA'S review. I've never tried any other palettes before this, and I was really excited to get to know the brand because I've heard a lot of amazing things. The main person I've heard talking about this brand is Nikki Tutorials, but I think over the past couple months, everyone has been talking about these just because they seem to be very amazing quality for the price. I had never really bit the bullet and done an order, but on my birthday I decided to use a little bit of the birthday money I got to put my money towards some of these JUVIA'S palettes. So I did buy only the ones in the new formula. I heard that the original Nubian, the Nubian 2, and then the original Saharan are not the same formula or quality as the ones that are coming out now. The only one that I really wanted to get but I was not able to purchase was the Magic palette. It was out of stock when I went to order it, so I was gonna try and track it down somewhere else, but I didn't get it in time for this video, so I will be trying that one out later. I'll probably share it with you guys in a future video, but I'm just gonna assume that the quality is going to be the same as the ones that are in this palette. I haven't heard anything different. I also do not have the new Warrior palette for you guys because it wasn't available or it wasn't even released when I made this order, so. But the palettes I'm gonna be reviewing for you guys are the Masquerade. This is the mini version. I didn't want to get the big version just because it seemed like a lot of unnecessary product. The Zulu palette, which is more of a rainbow palette. The Saharan 2 palette. I'm well aware of the fact that it's actually pronounced Saharan. That's just my Southern California accent coming through and saying Saharan, so I'm so sorry for that. That's kind of how I say it through the entire video, so I apologize. And the Festival palette. So I'm going to include timestamps in my description box so you can jump around to see what part of the review you would like to. I'm going to start by talking about my experience with my ordering, and then I'm going to get into each palette individually. I will be showing you guys pictures of looks I've done with each palette, and then I will also be including full swatches, and then I will give you guys my final thoughts. So that is how the video is going to go. I'm also going to be dipping into other palettes from my collection to show you guys possible shade dupes or color dupes, if these palettes can be considered dupes for any other palettes in my collection, or if they can be like comparable to other things. So I hope you guys enjoy this one, and I really hope you guys enjoy the format of this review. If you do like it, please let me know, because I am planning on ordering the Morphe Jaclyn Hill Vault, and I think that's probably how I'm going to go about that review. I'm probably going to format that review the same as this one if you guys like it. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. Please let me know your feedback in the comments, and without further ado, let's get right into my JUVIA'S review. First things first, I want to talk about my experience ordering these products. I placed my order on the night of my birthday, which was in the end of May, and I received my order about 1.5 weeks after that. They did send me my order information and my shipping very quickly. Shipping took a little bit longer than I was expecting. I was expecting to get it in like about a week. That's normally what it takes for stuff to get to me in California. It did take a little bit longer than I was expecting, but I was very excited to get everything. Thankfully, nothing came broken in the mail or damaged. I've heard that they don't have the best customer service when stuff comes damaged. I can't speak to that because that wasn't my experience, but just in general, my ordering experience, my purchasing, and the arrival of my palettes was awesome. So very pleased with it so far. Getting into individual palettes, I'm first going to talk about the Masquerade Mini. They do have two different sizes, the Masquerade Mini and then the Masquerade Regular. Obviously, the main difference between those two is going to be the size. This one is more the size of a standard eyeshadow palette. So I would say the pan size is very similar to the Morphe palettes, whereas the Masquerade Regular is going to be similar pan sizes to the other ones. Surprisingly though, the price difference isn't that major, so I did spring for the Masquerade Mini just because I don't really go through eyeshadows that often, so I'd rather have something that's a little bit less expensive with less product, even if it's not necessarily a better deal. This is the palette that I'm wearing on my eyes today. I also did another colorful look, so I will flash both of those looks on the screen. For my look today, I used Cairo, Burkina, Ada, Zulu, Casablanca, Dahlia, Giza, and Fulani. So basically the entire bottom 2 rows I used on my eyes. And then for the colorful look, I used pretty much all the colorful looks. So I've used pretty much every single shade in this palette. In terms of the palettes that I'm reviewing today, this one happens to be the oldest one, which means that it was released before all the other ones I'm talking about. So I wanted to test out this one just for quality's sake. The mattes in here are really nice. They're very pigmented. I would say for the more colorful ones like Zobo and Bori, you'd have to kind of build it up first and then kind of blend it out, which is pretty much standard practice with other matte shades that are in more colorful tones. Whereas the neutral ones, they're very blendable. They just perform very well. I really like how they performed in today's look. But the mattes blend very well. They stay very pigmented throughout the day, which is a main concern I have with other eyeshadows. I would say in texture they're a little bit drier, not quite as like creamy and almost wet feeling as the new Morphe formula. I really like the new Morphe formula that they've done in the 39A palettes, the 24G palettes, and the Morphe Jaclyn Jaclyn Hill palette. You might want to note that there are two shades in here, Bori and Cairo, which are technically mattes, but they do have micro glitters in them. You guys know I traditionally really hate shades like that. I don't understand why you can't just make it shimmer or matte. You have to like put glitter in a freaking matte shade, but I actually don't mind these ones. If you just dip in there and then tap off the excess on your brush, you'll get most of the glitter off your brush and keep most of the matte pigment. So these can function as matte shadows if you use them properly. And then finally, moving on to the shimmer formula, I've heard amazing things about JUVIA'S Place shimmers, and these did not disappoint me at all. They're very, very creamy, super pigmented, and they can build up to be extremely foiled on the eyes. I just love how these performed. The colorful ones blended really well together, and I didn't have any problems working with any of the shimmers. So overall, I really enjoyed the colors in this palette, and they all performed very well. Immediately when I saw the colors in the Masquerade palette, I thought of the Jaclyn Hill palette from Morphe's. As you can see, the two colorful rows in the JUVIA'S Place palettes are very similar to the colorful shades in the Jaclyn Hill palette. So if you have one or the other, I would say you probably don't need both. I do still use both of them. I do still reach for both of them. The Jaclyn Hill palette is personally my favorite one, just because it is my favorite in my collection. I love this palette so much. But the Masquerade palette is beautiful. I love the hot pinks in here, and just overall I'm very impressed with how both of them perform. Overall, I really like this palette. I would give this one, I'd say an 8 out of 10. I don't think the matte formula is like the best matte formula I've ever tried. If we're drawing to another like colorful formula that we really like from other brands, I would say Colored Rain, which is another black owned brand, does amazing matte pigmented shadows. So this isn't the best formula by any means that I've tried for matte shadows, but it's still very, very good. And for the price, I would say it's probably one of the best you can get. I started off swatching Chi, which is a deep royal blue, Molly, which is an emerald green shimmer, and then Dahlia, which is like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's a little bit of a lighter blue, but it's like the color of an ocean. It's just such a gorgeous shade. I then swatched Zola, a light blue shimmer, Makeda, a royal purple shimmer, and then Zobo, which looked purple in the pan, but kind of swatched as a lighter pink shade. So the mattes kind of showed up a little bit lighter on the swatches and on my eyes when I used them. Next up, Calabar, a shimmering cranberry shade, Bori, a pink matte with micro glitters in gold, and then Giza, which is a pearly white shade. Next is Burkina, a cool-toned matte brown, Cairo, a very warm orangey brown with gold micro glitter, and Ada, a kind of reddish brown shade. Finally, for the last row, Dahlia is a warm taupe shimmery shade, Zulu is a very warm matte brown, Casablanca is a coppery brown shimmer shade, such a gorgeous shade, and then Fulani is a dark chocolate matte. Here are the final swatches of the Masquerade palette. I would describe the color story as half jewel tone shimmers and half warm tone neutrals. Now, in comparing the Masquerade palette and the Morphe Jaclyn Hill palette, I first wanted to swatch the blues together. So the blue, which is called Kai or Chi in the Masquerade palette, compared very well with the shade Twerk in the Jaclyn Hill palette, as you can see. Next, I wanted to compare Zola from the Masquerade palette with Pool Party from Jaclyn's palette, and as you can see, both were very pigmented, very buttery, and just compared very well. Comparing the purple shades, I went into Makeda from the Masquerade palette and Royalty from the Jaclyn palette. Purples are harder to formulate. Makeda, as you can see, is very bright, whereas the one from the Jaclyn palette is a little bit darker and more of an amethyst purple. Next, I compared the cranberry shimmers. I went into Calabar from the Masquerade palette, and then I also went into Cran Apple from the Jaclyn palette. And I swatched those next to each other. I found that Calabar pulled a little more purple, whereas Cran Apple was more red, but they're still very similar. I wanted to compare these shades Ada from the Masquerade palette and Jax from the Jaclyn Hill palette next to each other because they seem like very similar. And here's where we kind of see a common trend with the mattes, is that they look a little bit darker in the pan in the Masquerade palette than they actually swatch and perform on the eyes. And that's what I noticed playing with the shadows themselves on my eyes, is that they were actually a little bit darker in the pan and showed up lighter on the eyes. So as you can see, when I swatched Fulani and Chip next to each other, despite looking very similar in the pans, they're very different tonally. That same thing happened when I swatched Giza from Masquerade and Obsessed from Jaclyn next to each other. Despite looking extremely similar in the pans, they looked very different on the arm. I went into Dahlia in the Masquerade palette, and then I went into Meeks from the Jaclyn palette. And again, despite looking extremely similar in the pans, they showed up very differently in tones of depth and tone on the arm. Same thing happened with Burkina from Masquerade and Mocha from Jaclyn. Very similar looking in the pans, but very, very different in terms of depth and color tone on the arm. So my final thoughts, while not complete dupes, I think that the Masquerade palette has a very condensed color scheme that is very similar to that of the Jaclyn Hill palette. So I could imagine that the Masquerade palette would be great for someone who really likes the color story from Jaclyn's palette, but is overwhelmed by having 35 shades to choose from. So it's a really great smaller version of the color story with really beautiful, vibrant shades in a great formula. Next, I'd like to talk about the Zulu palette. So first of all, I want to note that every single palette has an African theme, obviously. So I love the packaging on every single palette. This one is one of my favorites. And if you don't know world history or African history, the Zulu is a warrior tribe, or I guess now just a regular tribe, of people who lived in sub-Saharan Africa. They're still present today. So this palette is obviously more of a rainbow palette. And I went into this one a little bit hesitant because I've heard some not so flattering reviews on this one. A lot of people have said that these are very chalky, not super pigmented, and a little bit harder to blend. So I went into this one with a different approach that I do with other palettes, and I think that's probably why I like it so much. You can't really treat these like a normal eyeshadow. These are rainbow colors, and for most rainbow palettes, you have to do the same thing. You have to build up the colors first, and then blend them out very little. Pack and blend motion is a really easy thing to do, and it's probably the best thing you can do for matte shadows that are rainbow colored. I love this palette. I think it's perfect for this month because June is Pride Month. I did use this for one of my Pride makeup looks. I did 3 different Pride makeup looks, and this was one of the palettes I used for one of them. So I love this palette. Very, very pigmented once you blend them up. The swatches look horrible, so I apologize if my swatches look terrible. You just can't really rely on swatches to show you guys like the quality of a palette, only really the color. This palette is really good. It's not quite as user-friendly as the Masquerade one, just because that one is a little bit like more standard to work with. You can kind of do the same thing you would do with other eyeshadows with that palette, whereas this one you do have to go with a different technique. I didn't find any palettes in my collection that were 100% like, oh yeah, that's a total dupe. But I think this could do pretty much any rainbow palette. So the one I wanted to show you guys was my Sugarpill Pro palette, which I've been talking about quite a lot on my channel recently, because I really love it. This was another product that I recently invested in. I've been using it very often. I do colorful eyeshadow looks, so I would say if you don't really do a lot of eyeshadow looks where you use a lot of colorful shades, I don't think Sugarpill would be worth the investment for you. But for me, since I do Instagram makeup and I just love colorful shades, I really love this palette. Orange in here kind of pulls a little bit more pink when you blend it out, which is very weird. I've never seen an orange do that before, but it's not quite as true fiery orange as I was hoping for. I still do like it though, and it does look nice on the eyes. It's just not quite as orange as Flame Point in here. In terms of shadow texture, I think the formula of the shimmer shades is the same as pretty much every other JUVIA'S palette. These are amazing. They're very buttery and creamy once again. The mattes in here are very different. They're very, very dry. I would say that these are a little bit harder to work with, but if you go on a learning curve and you really try and work with the shadows in their own qualities, I think you'll really enjoy this palette. So I'm gonna give this one a 7.5 out of 10. It's probably not the most user-friendly, and you're obviously not gonna be wearing this every single day. But with this palette, I've come up with some really fun looks. So I really enjoyed this one as well, and I think it's really good for summer. So overall, really enjoying this one, and I will show you guys swatches now. I started off swatching the matte orange. None of these shades in here have names. And then the matte yellow showed up pretty poorly on the arm, but swatches don't really tell the whole story. And then the brown shade kind of did that same thing, where it showed up a lot lighter in the swatch and on the eyes than it did in the pan. I then moved on to the second row, which has a teal green matte, a true green shimmer, and then a tealish blue shimmer shade. All of them performed really, really well in the swatches and on the eyes. And then finally moving to the third row, there's a light rosy shimmer shade, a hot pink shade, and then a vibrant purple shade. The last 2 shades are mattes, and as you can see, the purple performed pretty poorly in the swatch. However, that's standard for most purples. I wanted to go back in and show you what the yellow and the brown would look like built up, because these are shades that would require building on the actual eyes, so that is what they look like built up. Overall, I'd say the color story of this is just a classic rainbow palette, perfect for vibrant looks. I wanted to start off swatching the oranges, so I did the orange from Zulu and then Flame Point from Sugarpill. And then as you can see, Sugarpill shadows do not swatch all that beautifully, so I think that's a really good example of how colorful shades like this don't necessarily swatch well. They have to be performed on the eyes to see quality. The same could be said from the yellow from the Zulu palette and then Sugarpill's Buttercup Cake. Both were pretty bad in swatches, but performed beautifully on the eyes. I then wanted to swatch the green, so I did the green from the Zulu palette and then Midori from Sugarpill. Midori was more of a true green, whereas the Sugarpill one was a little bit more on the blue side, but still pretty similar. I wanted to swatch the pink shade and then Kitten Parade from Sugarpill because they looked very similar in the pans. Plot twist, the JUVIA'S one was actually darker than the Sugarpill one. That never really happens with JUVIA'S Play Shadows, so I was pretty shocked to see that. And then finishing it off with the purple, and then Poison Plum from Sugarpill. Both are really good purple shades on the eyes, but as you can see, both swatch pretty horribly on the arm. Overall, I'd say they're pretty comparable, and if you don't want to spend $120 on the Sugarpill palette, Juvia's Place is a great option for good colorful shadows. Moving on to the Saharan 2 palette. This is the palette that I was really excited about. I think the Festival palette and this one were the ones that most enticed me. Saharan 2 has some beautiful shades in here, and one of my favorites is the shade here, Aziza. It's a very simple kind of champagne-y gold. I've been using this as a highlighter, and it's so blingy, blinding, beautiful. So I'm just gonna apply a little bit for you guys. Yeah, that's gorgeous. This palette is very similar in color scheme to the Natasha Denona Heiress palette, which came out for the holidays. This one is kind of a more expanded color scheme of that. You do have the beautiful burgundy, you have this very nice warm kind of terracotta matte orange shade, these vibrant sea blues, and these are so gorgeous. So I think you'll be able to see in the swatches just how beautiful these are, but I am so in love with this color scheme. You are kind of limited in what you can do with this palette alone just because you only get 3 mattes done here and they are very dark shades. So if you wanted to do a full look with this one, I would think you'd need to pull in some other colors from other palettes. I use this one in conjunction with the Festival palette just because that one has more mattes in it. That doesn't necessarily bother me just because I do love the formula of the shimmer shades, so I really do like this palette a lot. The mattes in here are actually a little bit creamier than the ones in the Masquerade palette, way more creamy than the ones in the Zulu palette, but these are beautiful. So if you actually want to see me using this shade here called Zora, I think you can actually watch my last video, the Get Ready With Me I did testing out new products, and I did use this palette on my eyes. I think this is probably one of my favorites from the purchase that I did from them, and I really enjoy this. So overall, I'm going to give this one a 9 out of 10. I would have loved if this shade here, Marrakesh, was actually a matte shade instead of a shimmer. I think that would really tie the whole palette together and make it a little bit more complete, but I really don't mind having to pull in other palettes just to create a look, and I think it's just so beautiful. So that's the one flaw I could find, but overall it's a beautiful palette, and here's the swatches. I started with the shade Marrakesh, which is a shimmery coral shade. I thought it was really pretty. And then moving on to its right, I went to the shade Aziza, which is a pretty nice champagne, almost icy shade, and then Hadia, which is a true coppery shade. Both swatched really well, and they're both shimmers. Moving down to the second row, Berber, which is a beautiful teal blue shimmer. I actually let out an audible gasp when I swatched that one. It's so pretty. And then Nomad, which is a really nice rosy, dusty pink. And then Chef Shawan, which is a Moroccan city, is a really nice icy blue. Moving on to the mattes, we have Fez, a very deep chocolatey brown, Zora, the deep burgundy shade, and then Taza, which is a very warm-toned, almost like saddle brown shade. All three swatched pretty true to color. Overall, I'd say this is a really nice warm-toned color with some pops of blue. It's really beautiful and deepened. Finally, wrapping it up, I'm going to talk about the Festival palette. And this palette, I think, is probably the most unique palette I've ever seen. I don't have any single palette in my collection that I could show you guys that would be very comparable to this one. And I don't think there's any palettes on the market that are very similar in color scheme. This is just so unique to me. Again, if you want to see me using this palette, I did use a bunch of the shades in here in my last Get Ready With Me, which I also used the Saharan too. So I will link that down below and also in the cards so you can see it, but I really like this palette a lot. I do need to disclose though the matte red in here called the Zafa. I think this might have given me an allergic reaction. I am kind of touch and go with some matte red shadows. With the ones from Huda Beauty, I get an allergic reaction. It's really bad. With this one, I kind of just got itchy eyeballs. It wasn't like super bad rash or anything, but it was still a reaction. So I'm a little bit cautious about this one. Probably won't use it all over my eyes like I did in the Get Ready With Me. I'd probably, if I ever use a shadow again, I'll probably just use it as an outer corner, like outer V definition shade, rather than like an all over crease eyeball shade. So I think one of my favorite shades in this palette is the shade here called Oro, which is a beautiful like kind of mustardy brownish yellow shade. It's a beautiful crease shade or transition shade. For pretty much any of the other palettes I mentioned, you could probably use this shadow for any of the other ones. These are just so vibrant. I love the shimmery white shade here called Uli. If you want to see how this one performs, I did use it in the Get Ready With Me, but it's that standard very creamy, extremely buttery and pigmented, very foiled Juvia's Place shimmer shade. The mattes in here, again, are very similar to the ones in the Saharan 2. They're a little bit creamier than the ones in Masquerade, and they just apply so beautifully, and they blend like a dream. So I love this palette so much. Don't know if I'm ever going to use the shade down here called Kaleke, which is a beautiful, like, deep black shimmer shade. As gorgeous as this shade is, I don't think I'd ever use it just because I don't really dabble into dark shimmer shades like that, or especially like a dark black shimmer shade. That being said though, if you do like this color, it performs beautifully. I have tried it on my eyes and it's gorgeous. I don't really have a palette that I could show you guys that would be very, very similar to this one. The only thing I could really think of would be the Too Faced Just Peachy Mattes. If I covered up the bottom row, I think that would be very similar in color scheme, but just overall not that similar. So there's more of a balanced matte shimmer ratio in here. You do have more mattes than shimmers, so I like to use this one with the Saharan too, just because you have more mattes in here, so you can kind of create that full, well-rounded look. Overall, really enjoyed this one. I'll show you guys swatches, and then I will give you guys my final thoughts. I started off with Izafa, which is the True Red Matte shade, very beautiful in swatch. Then I moved on to the shade Uli, a true icy white shimmer, and Ofala, which is a very warm, almost neon reddish orange. Very beautiful. It's kind of like a blood orange tone. Moving on to the second row, we have Monwoo, a matte coral shade, Iriji, which is a hot pink matte shade as well, and then we also have the shade Oro, which is a matte mustardy yellow, and yellows just do not swatch well, so please disregard the ugly swatch here. It shows up better in the eyes. In the bottom row, we have Kaleke, which is the dark black shimmer shade. We also have Aba, which is a teal blue shimmer shade, or satin shade, and then Odogwu, which is a champagne goldish shimmer shade. Overall, beautiful, warm tone, very unique color scheme. I just love this palette so much. And now for my final thoughts on the Juvia's Place palettes. I 100% recommend this brand. I seriously am so impressed with the quality of these shadows, and for the price, I don't think you can beat it. I forgot to mention each palette, but this one is $25 normally. I did get it on sale for I think $22 or $23, and then these palettes are each $21, but I got them on sale for $17.50 each. In total, my order came out to around like $63 because there was a discount going on. I got a really great deal, so I'm very, very happy with these palettes, and I think I'm definitely going to be purchasing more from them. Especially as they come out with more things. Stay tuned on my channel if you want to see me review the Magic palette once I actually do get it, because very excited about that one. I think the color scheme looks very similar to my beloved Morphe 39A palette, so I'm very excited about that. I'm really, really happy with these palettes. I will continue to use all of them, do looks with them on my Instagram. You will definitely see these palettes in the future. Probably one of the best palette purchases I've made in the entire year, so please keep recommending things to me because I've really been enjoying everything you've told me to buy. If I had to pick a favorite palette from this haul, I think it's gonna be the Saharan 2. I do really like the Festival palette, but the Saharan 2, the color scheme is just beautiful, and I love the blues in there. So overall though, I do really love all the palettes. They all perform beautifully, and I would 100% recommend every single one of them. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed my Juvia's Place review. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure you let me know in the comments if you like this format, because I will be reviewing the Jaclyn Hill palette soon. So comment down below what your favorite palette is from this video. I might do a giveaway. No promises, but I will try to pull something together for you guys, especially if I get to 5,000. And yeah, if you made it to the very end of this video, I love you so much. Thank you so much for watching my channel.